Dumalang Samanani. Hello, South Africa. A very warm welcome to Expressions. This is definitely the place for you to air your views. I'm your host, Jacqueline Mapala.
And I'm your host, Umqolisi Wagomasango. Now, we are talking about the upcoming local government elections with Jackie, and we are asking, as your number one youth current affairs show, should young people be included in political roles in the upcoming elections? We invite you to participate in the sole important discussion in Nkundleni Zethu Zokuxhumana.
Yes, because this is indeed a very important conversation, because the president of the country, Cyril Ramaphosa, actually announced the fact that on the 27th of October 2021, this is when the local government elections are going to be taking place. And this is the sixth time in terms of South African history where actually South African voters have been able to vote for leadership as well as public representative on a local district as well as metropolitan level. Now, the IEC have also said to us, or at least announced to the country, that on the 17th and 18th of July 2021, this is when at least voter registration is going to be taking place.
But should young people be included in political processes? That's the big question, Namhlanje, that we're asking as Expressions. And of course, it can't be a voice without your voice. That's why we took to the streets to find out. Have a look at this.
Good afternoon, everyone, and my name is Bomikazi Wakwasali. Today I will be your street journal, and we are at the streets of Braamfontein in Johannesburg. Why is it important for young people to partake in local elections?
I think it is important because we are the future leaders.
We need to get to choose who runs the country.
In this age, a lot of young people are also quite educated in politics and everything. So I think it is.
I'm not sure.
You as a citizen, you have the right to vote, so you have the right to choose your leaders.
South Africa is now dominated by young people, which means they are the ones who have to make the decisions.
It's important because as young people, we have a whole lot more to say, and being given the opportunity to vote, it allows us to vocalize the problems and the opportunities that we may encounter.
Those young people will be affected by the result of what's going on. So you cannot have old people dictating what young people are doing. So it's very important that they are involved in the process.
Eventually, we are the ones that are going to run the country and do what we want to do with the country, because I think the adults have shown what they want to do. So I think it's our time to shine.
Should young people be included in the next upcoming elections to be councillors?
Yes, I think they should.
I think it's time when South Africa has to be ruled by young people, because it has been ruled by old people, and young people don't have the experience to rule South Africa.
So we need people our age to be a part of the council, to be the voice.
I think young people should become councillors if they can.
I think it's a big responsibility.
My suggestion would be something like a learnership of some sort, or working under the councillor, so that when you are eventually a councillor, it makes sense.
Academic is one proof of intelligence, but academics is not everything. But you do need young people to be involved, because you cannot involve them in a council. Now, decision making needs you to be alive for a very long time. In order for you to make any council decision governing human beings, you need to have been matured enough to have talked to a lot of human beings, and you cannot have a 19-year-old represent 25-year-olds.
So those were the voices of young people on the ground, obviously answering the very important question around whether is this the time for young people to take up political positions and roles in the upcoming local government elections. But of course, to help me unpack and take this conversation further, I'm joined by Andrew Meyer, who is a councillor, or at least he's a councillor from the city of Tshwane, and I'm also joined by Penuel Maduna, who's an aspirant young councillor. Gentlemen, a very warm welcome to Expressions.
Good evening to you, and good evening to your viewers, and thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And Andrew, you're like a history maker. I mean, before I throw back to Mkolis, you're like a history maker. You're 24 as a counselor.
That's correct, yes. I'm currently 24 years old.
Goodness gracious, young people doing it for themselves. But I think before we get to that, let me just throw to Mkolisi and just say, hey, how you doing? How's your audience members doing today?
On that celebratory note, of course, we are joined by Ulusha, who are going to be giving us their accounts. And of course, guys, it's all going to be about your experiences. It's young people from the ground as well as the various youth formations. Guys, we thank you so much for joining us. Jackie, let's get the conversation going.
Absolutely. Let's get this conversation going. I think, Andrew, as a person who has actually occupied the position for a while, I mean, you've occupied it since you were 19, right?
That is correct.
That
yes,
is correct.
19.
I mean, 19 years old. I mean, obviously the question is, what does a 19-year-old know about being a councillor for the city of Tshwane? But I think most importantly, what have you done and what have you uniquely brought to the table as a young person that nobody else in your space has?
Well, I think first and foremost, it's the fact that I have been the example that young people, that the youth can essentially be part and have a political role within a capital city as big as the city of Tshwane. And the focus has been service delivery and improving the service delivery, taking office from 2016, and I think that has definitely been done looking back.
Mm-hmm. But what have you done specifically, Andrew, as a young person, as a councillor for the city of Tshwane?
Myself specifically, I've always been accessible to community members, to our voter base, as well as stakeholders within the city of Tshwane. We've worked on initiatives. I've been working with the MMCs of the city of Tshwane and stakeholders all the way from the Hatfield CID, improving the Hatfield CID that is within the city of Tshwane, and focusing on those areas that has lacked service delivery to improve that service delivery, and working hand in hand with officials of the city as well as community members to focus on those areas that is of great concern and getting that resolved.
Yeah, and for you, Penuel, you're an aspirant young councillor. I want to find out from you, what specifically are you going to be focusing on in terms of the role or the position that you want to take on within the city of Joburg, that you feel, especially from a youth perspective, that has sort of been overlooked? I mean, the conversation, as you heard, with the conversations on the ground and voices on the ground, is the fact like, these people are old, they don't know what they're doing and so forth. But as a young person, what are you going to be doing differently? What are you going to be bringing?
No, thanks. I think let me start by saying that public representation must reflect the demographics of the country. It does not make sense that whilst the median age of South Africa is 27.6 years, the median age of public representatives is 54 years. We find ourselves in a situation like in Northwest. We have a premier who can't even put a time in his phone. But we are talking about the fourth industrial revolution. How are those people expected to push the fourth industrial revolution? So we need young people who knows these things. We need young people who understand what young people need. You know, we have a very old minister of basic education, a very old minister of higher education.
Sorry, Penuel. So we know the rhetoric. The question was just simply this. What are you going to doing? What are you going to be doing specifically? Because remember, you're the aspirant councillor. What are you going to be bringing that is different and unique that you feel has not necessarily been considered?
No, I think one thing that I must push first is to make employment recruitment in the city of Joburg digital. You can't find ourselves in a situation whereby young people must spend a lot of money in printing papers, IDs and everything, then they have to spend money to go and submit applications to be employed. So the first thing will be to digitalize the recruitment process and also to make services of the city available to ensure that in a place like Deep Slot, in a place like Orange Farm, we have enough libraries, because we can't have a place where there are more than 45,000 young people, but there's only one library. So the critical issue is to make sure that there are enough opportunity centers that are close to young people, because we can't allow a situation whereby there are more taverns in our communities, more than schools, more than libraries, or more than opportunity centers.
Mm-hmm. And this debate around age, what is your contribution around it? To say that, how can you occupy a leadership position of this magnitude where you are responsible for communities, right? You're not just responsible for just young people, you're responsible for a whole constituency of people. So how does the age factor work as an advantage or a disadvantage, especially when we're talking about these local elections?
I think we are not saying that all people must go out completely, but we are saying that we want to coexist with them in this environment. So young people always develop themselves. Young people always go to school. We understand the challenges that we are facing. So we're going to serve both old and young people because we've lived in our communities. We understand what our people need, not just young people, but also even the old people. We are going to make sure that we serve them as well.
Yeah. I guess, and I still, the pivotal and most important vital question that we're asking today is, should young people be included in these political roles in terms of the upcoming local elections that are going to be taking place? And as a young person, are you going to be voting? Are these young people on our stage today convincing you that young people can actually take up that mantle? Well, make sure you stay with us because we are continuing with this conversation after the break. You're watching Expressions.
Should we have young people more involved in political processes, or should they be involved and, of course, be given political roles? This is, of course, as we're heading to the local government elections penned to happen in October. What do you think, Lapho Mbugeli Lapekaya? Do engage with us in Kundlen Zethu Zokuxhumana. Now, we did hear Upanwell just as we began the show. He spoke about how important it is ukuthi sibe ne-leadership ezo-understanda inkinga zolusha. Hence, he said that we need leadership that is representative of the demographic. Would you agree with that statement that he made?
Yeah, thank you very much. I agree because young people are best positioned to deal with issues that are affecting them. Remember, even the service delivery protests in communities, they are led by young people. And what this old generation are doing, they are rubber bulleting us and they're also tear gassing us. They are doing what they did to late Solomon Mahlangu. Remember, he was very young. Even Steve Biko, he was very young. So it shows that young people has always been progressive in terms of dealing with issues that affect the entire society. Thank you.
So now young people, guys, just basically feel engati sometimes there's no need for them to vote. Ingoba siyabona izinga le unemployment la eMzansi is so high right now. There are so many social ills that are facing Oloshala la eMzansi right now. What do you think is wrong, kahle kahle, as a young person?
Well, thank you very much. I think what is wrong, it is the operations that the older generation is using to run the country. Because if you can check what is really transpiring in the country, young people are the ones that are highly active and are willing to learn. So we are saying that there should be a smooth transition of power and skills and knowledge to young people so that they can lead, and also taking it to cognitive cognizance that young people are willing to show and learn as much as they could be taught on from whoever who can teach them. Thank you.
Okay, maybe if we can also just take to social media, just of course for a few comments. We hear Ulwandle who says, yes, new people means new young changes. Bonkosim Timunya says, yes. Ulwandle says they can put young people all they want, but they will still hear from the older generation. And that is the problem with politics in South Africa. Perhaps if I can also get you to step onto the mic and speak to us about the importance of having young people in leadership positions as we head to the local government elections, and your point.
I believe that each and every generation has its own mission. So when we're saying that we want a renewal, or when we say that we want a renewal, we're speaking that we want to remove the old generation from, because they had their own struggles and we are having a different struggle from what they have. Their struggle was then to fight the apartheid government. They do not understand the current struggle that we are facing at this current moment. Hence, you see those old people in parliament, they are sleeping every day. When you want service delivery, they are not there to deliver because they don't care about the current generation. They don't care about the young ones that must lead. And as the speaker said before, that we tend to listen to old people. Yes, it's happening, but now as the ANC League, we have taken a stand that we are going forward with our generational mission, which is that young people must take over everything and everywhere. Thank you.
Now, there are also some bread and butter issues that come from young people here also on social media. Masbega Bafetu. Young people live in dire poverty, and we come across this day in, day out. And the struggle of the young person is a never-ending one. Perhaps let's speak to you and find out, what do you think needs to be done, and what solutions would you suggest as a young person for people in power who are watching the show right now?
No, thank you very much. I think before we problematize what you are actually submitting, we must firstly be able to engage about this particular setting that we're actually having. We are very uncomfortable as young people, as the black majority, to sit down on these brown couches here while a white settler is actually narrating a picture of how he has actually benefited by virtue of being a white person. So I'm saying that this white chap must come and sit down in this brown couch so that he is able to join us here before he actually narrates this rainbow nation picture of how he has benefited by virtue of a skin color. So I'm actually humbly saying to you that I am personally uncomfortable with sitting down on a brown couch while a white chap is sitting there on that table actually narrating that picture. So
Okay.
I'm saying, listen, I'm saying that before we can even go further, this white chap must come and sit down, or else I'm very much comfortable in watching from the sidelines. That is
Okay,
my
then
proposal.
we're gonna continue with the conversation, but having him on the show is basically on the purpose of
No,
that.
we're here
He
to
is a
engage about the
counsellor,
structural matters
and
of-
now so we're also going to be
No, he must
engaging
come
on
and
this
sit down
particular
as well.
matter.
He
If
must
I can
come and
ask you
sit
to
down.
politely please sit
He
down,
must
of
come-
course.
that white chap must come and sit
Can you please sit down, my brother? We're on a live shot right now. Perhaps, Jacqueline, if I can also continue with the conversation. And of course, the gentleman has decided to leave the show, and we respect his view. And of course, we continue to hope that we have engagements that are fruitful on the show as expressions, as an agent of transformation. My brother, perhaps if you can speak to us about some of your accounts on the ground as a young person, and what normally happens and what struggles you face as a young person.
Well, thank you very much once again. Look, as young people here, we need people who will bring innovation, innovative ideas, because if you can check, the world is changing on its own. We are now facing, or we are now approaching, the fourth industrial revolution. So the question is, how are old people going to assist us on adapting to a new change? That is the first question. Also, we are very much disturbed with the operations they use again. You find that a councillor is not staying at a ward whereby the people he or she is servicing stays there. You find that a councillor is servicing Alexander while staying in Sandton. How is that person going to know what they need or what they want? So this is what we must problematize and take into consideration as to how are we going to resolve this issue. We are extremely not comfortable, when we will not lie to you, because the service delivery is very bad, very low, and very weak. So now the question is, how do we resolve those matters and get someone who will deliver?
How do we resolve those matters? And of course, we also try and resolve them by fruitful discussions, as you can see in Bugeliwe expressions. And of course, when our producers and our team sit down and decide who makes the panel, it's of course always representative of the youth market as well as the demographics of the country. As you can see, we can only try to make sure that we give everybody an equal platform to make their views heard. And of course, Constance says, well, we need fresh blood to give us answers to young people problems. That's what you have to say on Twitter. We continue. Masbuya. This is Expressions.
You're watching Expressions, your number one youth current affairs show. We are putting a very important spotlight on the local government elections that are taking place on the 27th of October 2021. And of course, we are asking the very important question around, young people, should they be included in political roles in the upcoming government? Now, of course, we have to wrap up this conversation. But I think for you, Amru, I think it came out quite powerfully and quite poignant around the fact that, representation and inclusion. How do you, as a young, white, young person who's coming from privilege, represent the voices of people who don't look like you, from Soshanguve, from Mamelodi, for instance, in the city of Tshwane, so that the constituency who are watching you right now feel that they are represented and taken into consideration if you happen to be a councillor in the upcoming elections?
To answer that question, the first thing is I wouldn't say there has been privilege, because I went through the same process as all the other councillors within the city of Tshwane for the party that I represent, which is the DA. And I've worked in Livenhout-Bosch, I've worked in Hammanskraal, I've worked in parts of Mamelodi, I've been to Eersterus as well, where I have represented those communities. More recently, I have even chaired public meetings within Hammanskraal as well as in Livenhout-Bosch, where I've listened to the concerns and taken up the concerns with the relevant bodies within the city of Tshwane. So I think it is all about diversity as well, and inclusion of all.
Yeah, and I think, just as a closing opinion, why should young people vote? Why should they vote in the local government elections?
No, I think it's very important for young people to participate in this kind of elections, because local government is the very closest government institution that is close to our people. It deals directly with issues of service delivery. So if we as young people don't go out and vote, we are actually denying ourselves the right to participate in deciding the people that must lead us.
Yeah, so basically young people should take ownership and claim of them being able to take up leadership positions in the local government. Last comments throw.
Yeah, do you still have some time for more comments from the audience?
No.
Okay, no, we're done.
Absolutely
Seems like
not.
we are done.
Okay.
Well, Mbugeli, thank you so much for watching Expressions Namhlanje. We asked you the big question whether young people should be involved in political roles in the upcoming elections, and we accept and see all your comments. Thank you for joining us. From all of us at Expressions, till next time. Bye.
Adios, muchachos. Bye.